Hi everyone, welcome back to Business and AI podcast. And today we will start looking at our very third book. This book is called Supremacy: AI, ChatGPT, and the Race That Will Change the World. It's authored by Parmy Olson. This 2024 Financial Times Business Book of the Year delves into the competition between AI research firms like OpenAI and DeepMind, highlighting the technological advancements and ethical considerations shaping the future of AI. This is the third book, like I said, we will be reviewing on this podcast, and we have chosen this book because it's very recent and the content is also very timely. So, in today's episode, we would review chapters 1, 2, and 3, talk about what went right, what could have been better, and everything in between. So let's dive right in. Chapter 1 sets the stage for the early 2000s back at Sam Altman's high school. The author paints a vivid portrait of Sam Altman's early life in Missouri. This title for chapter 1, High School Hero, it sets the tone. We are seeing an activist and a leader in the making. Sam is a bright student juggling a range of academic and extracurricular pursuits, from water polo to yearbook editing, all while embracing his identity as a gay teenager in a conservative environment. We also learn about his close interactions with school administration. Whenever a policy seemed unfair, he would go straight to the principal's office to argue his case. This sense of direct engagement suggests an early flair for negotiation and leadership under pressure, skills he'd eventually take to Silicon Valley. Another major takeaway is the transformative role of the internet, especially the AOL chat rooms, and shaping Sam's view of community. What he discovered online, an instant global way of finding like-minded people. This would echo through his later ventures. So basically, the key takeaways from chapter 1 was Sam's early activism, community building, and tech as a lifeline, especially because exposure to online forums shaped his belief in tech's capacity to, empower, unite, and occasionally disrupt the society. Let's quickly move on to chapter 2. It's titled Winning, Winning, Winning. Next, the spotlight shifts to Demis Hassabis, a name that resonates in the AI world for his extraordinary work in DeepMind. Where chapter 1 centers on a high school activism, chapter 2 delves into the formative experiences of a tech prodigy obsessed with problem solving through games. We see an entirely different upbringing, not London, chess championship, advanced programming skills, and a fierce love of god games like Populous and Team Pack. By the age of 17, Hassabis had co-created Team Pack, a simulation game that sold millions of copies. This chapter details his drive for complexity. Why simulate just a few characters when you can simulate thousands? Overreaching ambition becomes a recurring theme. He founded Elixir Studios to craft immersive living worlds, but the company faced financial and logistical strains that forced it to close. Rather than a straightforward success story, it's a narrative of big dreams outpacing existing technology, underscoring how pushing boundaries sometimes means risking spectacular failure. In chapter 2, we see that chess and simulation games weren't merely hobbies. They were intellectual workout that shapes Hassabis' approach to AI. Hassabis' desire to simulate realistic worlds reveal a let's call it a forward-thinking mindset, especially for breakthroughs yet prone to overreach. And the collapse of Elixir Studios illustrates how failure can be a stepping stone, especially in innovation-driven fields. Let's move over to chapter 3. It's titled Save the Humans. Chapter 3 returns to Sam Altman, now older and facing entrepreneurial stress. The dramatic opening scene, Altman, lying on the floor of his hot, cramped apartment, overwhelmed by a failing deal, signals a turning point. The location sharing startup he'd founded wasn't taking off as planned. Despite strong pitches and partnership with mobile carriers, user adoption remained lukewarm. The narrative in this chapter then unfolds to show how failure nudged Altman towards deeper thinking about AI. He recognized that if a computer could one day replicate his brain's functions, it meant humanity's intelligence wasn't as untouchable as we would like to think. He pivoted towards an even more ambitious vision, advancing machine intelligence in a way that could benefit humanity on a large scale. Chapter 3 also underscores Altman's knack for network building. He leveraged contacts made during his struggles with Loopt to pivot early stage investing, eventually rising through the ranks of Y Combinator. This chapter closes with a sense that Altman is on the cusp of something monumental, an AI-focused future that he believes could save humans from existential threats. While showing Altman's network mastery, which is shown in his relationship with venture capitalists and tech insiders, which positioned him to spearhead future initiatives like OpenAI. This chapter also shows existential curiosity. That is, the idea that human intelligence can be replicated or surpassed by AI, and this frames Altman's new mission, whether for salvation or disruption. So, let's review what worked across all these 3 chapters. I like, and I think it's great that these chapters took a story-driven approach. So you would just be glued to all of the interesting stories of all of these pace setters. The author tells these foundational tales as human stories, not as dry historical accounts. The vivid personal details like team activism, chess, prodigy dreams, entrepreneurial meltdowns, they all make this chapter resonate on an emotional level. Also, by toggling between Altman and Hassabis, Olson gives us a panoramic view of how different backgrounds can lead to overlapping missions in AI. Also, the author repeatedly shows how early passions like activism for Altman or gaming for Hassabi evolve into adult ambitions, reinforcing the notion that childhood interests can foreshadow groundbreaking careers. That kind of resonated with me. I like today's review because it's for everyone, right? Even if you're not really interested in AI or business, the lessons here are for everyone. Now let's look at the challenges. What I think could have been better. The first one, I think that chapter 1 dives into Sam Altman's teen years in detail, but we get less background on certain complexities. Um, there's really a narrow or a shallow cultural look at the early 2000s. So, and there's also a fast transition. The chapters move quickly from personal to big picture AI aspirations. So, also, if you pick up the book to dive into the heart of AI's existential threats or intricacies of ChatGPT, you might find yourself getting impatient because the early chapters are just about discussions or stories on the AI founders themselves, not about AI actually. So you might get very you might get very impatient. So why should you, as the listener, care about these early chapters? It's because they illustrate how the seeds of future revolutions are planted early, often in unexpected ways. In a time when AI is influencing every aspect of our world, from self-driving cars to generative chatbots that might write your next memo, understanding the backstories of top innovators can shed light on current events. For instance, as AI regulation becomes a hot topic worldwide, you know, it gives us a glimpse into the moral compasses and personal journeys of Sam Altman and Demis Hassabis, and this might help us predict how these leaders will shape policy and corporate culture. Looping in current news, the EU and the US are ramping up discussions about AI regulations, focusing on fairness, privacy, and accountability. Leaders like Altman have testified before Congress, influencing how governments might craft laws around AI ethical deployment. So, understanding their personal backgrounds can give us clues about how they will navigate this ever-evolving policy landscape. So now, how does this apply to us practically? I think the first thing to grab from this chapter is to embrace trial and error. Both Altman and Hassabis learn from their failures than their successes. So whether you're a founder, manager, or just someone with a passion, don't shy away from calculated risk. Also, identify your North Star. Just as team activism shaped Altman and gaming obsession shaped Hassabis, ask yourself, what consistent thread runs through your life that could point you to your next big venture or passion? Also, the third thing that everyone can practically apply is to network with integrity. Altman's story especially highlights how genuine relationship built before you need them becomes invaluable later. This is a timeless principle in any industry, but especially relevant in rapidly shifting fields like tech. My next question would then be, what can you do today? I think first, you should try to map your origins. Reflect on informative experience from your childhood or teen years. Is there a cause or an interest that still resonates with you? Try to find a single, tangible way to build on that interest today. The second one, fail faster, fail forward. That would mean that if you're working on a project that's hitting roadblock, ask yourself, how can I turn these setbacks into stepping stones? Sometimes pivoting to a bigger challenge can be more fruitful than sticking with a smaller but stagnant vision. And then you can try engaging in continuous learning. Both Altman and Hassabis are voracious learners. So whether you prefer taking an online course on AI or reading daily tech news or listening to industry podcasts, feed your mind with diverse perspectives. So this is my question for reflection for you today. The first question would be, if you had to single out one childhood passion that might change your future career, what would it be? And how could you nurture it now? I think this is a very thought-provoking question. My second question would be, in the light of the rapid AI developments we see in the news, is there a balance between pushing tech boundaries and pausing for ethical reflection? How might young entrepreneurs find that balance earlier on? And my third question would be, think about a time you faced strong social or institutional pushback. How did you handle it? And what lessons could you apply today if you needed to become a change agent again? So we have just navigated 3 powerful chapters that trace the backstories of 2 very strong figures in the AI world. Chapter 1 tells us about Sam Altman, his formative activism and tech curiosity. Chapter 2 tells us about Demis Hassabis, he's a complete gaming genius, his appetite for grand, sometimes over-ambitious projects. And chapter 3 circled back to Altman's entrepreneurial endeavors. In essence, these chapters highlight the unique paths each of these characters took, parts that would converge in the broader story of AI's global race. So whether you're an aspiring founder, an AI enthusiast, or just someone who loves a good origin story, there's plenty of lessons here to spark a good conversation. So we're going to be ending this episode at this point. In our next episode, we are going to dig into the next chapters of this book. So thank you for tuning in, and please stay curious. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.